Hello, this is Gwen. Today is Tuesday, November the 28th, 2017. The time is 7:25 p.m. I'm going to call this one a discussion about sexual harassment or Bill Cosby's revenge. If you hadn't already seen them, then look at my video for Bill Cosby, the Bill Cosby situation, and the Bill Cosby situation as a wake-up call. And I'll put the links in the description box when I'm finished with this one. Basically, I said that in the Bill Cosby situation, I said that the women who are accusing Bill Cosby use different rules, and although things may have happened, they weren't without their consent. And I discussed that at length. And the Bill Cosby situation as a wake-up call was about the men who are throwing Cosby under the bus, acting like they never did anything like that, and how could he do this and all these bad things about him. Well, this one is called Bill Cosby's Revenge, or Mr. Bill Cosby's Revenge, because the things that are happening now show how fast things can turn around. The same things that was what they're dishing out, they're getting back in their face. And not only that, the ones who are dishing it out right now have women in their background that they were inappropriate with. Things can turn around real fast. The Bill Cosby situation as a wake up call was because it's about people, young people who need to really take precautions right now while they're young, so they won't have these situations in their future. The laws and the social mores have changed. So we're going to talk about the law, and we're going to talk about things that things socially, what's happening in our society. It's a wake up call because our society has changed. If you ever saw the Bluto and Popeye TV cartoons, and you saw how Bluto would be all over Olive Oil, and she's said no several times consistently, and yet he's still pursuing her, that's sexual harassment. But that was a children's cartoon. Okay, whole different dynamic socially. Men were supposed to pursue you and be aggressive with you. That's called, they consider that passionate and romantic. That he's so overcome with desire and need for you that he's basically out of control. That was high romance in those days. Have you ever seen Pepe Le Pew cartoons, the Warner Brothers cartoons out of the Bugs Bunny series? How he's pursuing the little cat. These are cartoons that were meant for children. Children were supposed to learn social, learn acceptable behavior, more or less. I mean, you're not supposed to show kids cartoons that demonstrated bad behavior unless there were severe consequences. And this little cat used to cut him all up and beat him up, and he's still pursuing her. She's running away and all of that, and he's still pursuing her. And it was considered funny and amusing. It really was. And if you ever do see Bugs Bunny cartoons, you can see them on so many levels, so many levels. There are things that I didn't even understand until I was a grown up. But nevertheless, that's a cartoon for a child. Those were the social mores of the time. Okay? So and when we use today's standards for yesterday's behavior, we're not being really fair. We're really not. We're really not. For those of you who disagree and have something else to say and that they want to pursue, don't yell at this one. Record your own, and I do not mind if you put a link to your video recording in my box. I mean, I don't mind if you put it in your comments. In the comments, just put a link to yours, whatever you decide to say, and do it. As to paraphrase Queen Latifah, um, video and YouTube is my way to get through, but it also works for you. So what you gonna do? Basically, everything I say, you have the same method to do it too. You don't have to yell and be mad. Just make a recording, but do use the YouTube platform, because I do want you to be accountable to the same YouTube protocols as I am. So use the YouTube platform and say your position. I would love to hear your position. I don't have a problem with you disagreeing with me. I really don't. I really do not. And I don't have the least bit of a problem being disagreed with. It doesn't bother me in the least. And I'm not going to be mad at you, whatever you say. Just so you say it on the YouTube platform. Okay? Because I really do want you to have a chance to speak your word. You don't need to cuss me out and say little mean things. Not at all. I don't mind if you put your link to your video on there. So Bill Cosby revenge is that all the men that are being called out for their behavior were sitting in judgment of him. They were reporting on him, having debates and things about him and his stuff. But they were equally guilty of the same things, if not more, way more. And lest you forget, the men that are sitting around talking about the other guys next to them and throwing their former peers under the bus, well, they've got women in their background that they behaved in a way that she might consider inappropriate, and she might come forward, as they are every day to various people. Yes, various people. So don't be so careful to, I mean, don't be so quick to point your finger at the other guy. You may well have women in your background that you didn't even know about, or had forgotten about, or didn't even think about, or that you thought was resolved. I have no doubt that most of these men who had that situation that are being called out thought whatever happened was completely resolved. You know, like some idiot makes a pass at you and you smack him upside the head, they call it resolved. Or you clearly say no and shove him away or whatever. When you had your reaction at the time, a lot of these men thought that was over and done with and resolved. But the woman is coming out the woodwork saying that it's not resolved and how she felt at the time and what it meant to her. So this is, in my mind, going to help with clarity a little bit. So let's look at this. What I did was go ahead and Google the federal policy on sexual harassment. Every federal agency and state agency, for that matter, has a policy on sexual harassment. It is based primarily on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so they will build their policy statement and all based on that. Now let me see if I can find that 1964 one. But anyway, I left this table of contents here, this menu of all the websites that have something to do with sexual harassment, so that you can see how easy it is to find things that talk about it. Okay, this is the civil rights law, or rather the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, and this is their basic basic facts about sexual harassment. And it has a link to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and is regulated by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Everything that happens in the government in America has got some kind of law listing what you're supposed to do and can't do. It could be a law, an amendment, bylaw, something is in writing saying what you can and can't do. Okay, so this has a governing document, and I'm going to click on that. This is the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it has the definitions. It's got the talking about things with foreign and religious employment, unlawful employment practices, other unlawful employment practices, EEOC, and this is right there. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and enforcement provisions. Okay, this is a pretty long law, and I would recommend that you at least read it or glance over it because it's all of that. Things that we should know, things that we should pay attention to as citizens. Not a lot of people know about federal regs. If I were you, I would get pencil and paper and talk about that. E Type in the when you do get a chance to Google, type in the words ECFR. This is the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, and that would get you to the thing for regs and the governing documents that run America and tell everything you need to do. I just clicked on EEOC regs and I'm just looking at them because I look at this stuff all the time, so I know what it says pretty much. So we've already discussed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and we saw how small the provisions were. This is a pretty short list of things to do. And it does talk about it being 15 or more employees. Right there on that line, 15 or more employees, state and local and federal government, and also applies to employment agencies. And it basically, sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, included but not limited to. That is, it's all of this, but you can add stuff. And a victim is, as well as a harasser, may be a man or a woman. They don't have to be the opposite sex. It could be your supervisor, agent of the employer, and coworker or non-employee. Does not have to be the victim. Does not have to be the person harassed, but could be someone affected by the offensive conduct. That is, if two women are walking up and the male has a pin-up calendar on this in his cubicle, and the one that walked up was his friend and was chit-chatting with him, the one that was with the friend could have been the one that felt harassed, even though the friend didn't. Okay? Unlawful sexual harassment can occur without economic injury or discharge to the victim. It can be, harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. This is a biggie here because it must be unwelcome, but you don't know if it's unwelcome until the person tells you. So that's a hard one. That's why among the things that people did at other agency was to expand on this. So I'm going to look at the one policy that has to do with the Department of State, the State Department. This is their policy. Every government agency has their own individual policy. I worked in two different government agencies and they both had their own policies, but they all are similar, very similar. So we're going to talk about their list. You remember the one that was on the original list? It wasn't this extensive. So they talking about sexual pranks or repeated teasing, jokes, innuendo. And I'm gonna come. Let me take a pause right here and talk about jokes. People who plan to harass don't think of it as harassing. They plan on making a pass and having sex with you. That's and this could be your co-worker, supervisor, anybody, even a subordinate. Among the things they do to see how receptive you're gonna be is start with the little jokes and innuendos. If you don't plan to be receptive to any passes that they might make at you, then you have to nip it in the bud. And among the things that you nip in the bud is not playing that. Let them play that game with you. You People who wanted to draw me out and pursue things like that, they would tell jokes or get ready to. After the first attempt at a dirty joke around me, I made myself absent from the place. And I said, "Ooh, I hate dirty jokes. See y'all." And I left. So that filler out didn't work. They would have a sexually explicit conversation. I walk up and I hear them saying that stuff. I'm out of there. Oh, that's da da da. Oh, no, no, no. I don't want to hear nothing about that. Thank you. That's the last thing I want to hear is you doing God knows what and shudder. So they'll know that I don't have any sexual interest in them. And so they learned quickly that I wasn't going to be one for that. Just because you want friends and everybody to like you, if they're liking you the wrong way, it is not worth it. The reason why I'm talking about prevention is that even though you might be technically right about being sexually harassed and you can sue them and persecute them and all of that, you still have the trauma should they do it. You can't outsue that trauma. The trauma is going to be there. That pain and that feeling that you will have when you have been harassed. That's not going to go anywhere. So, in order to avoid even having to feel it, despite your recompense or your dealing with it or whatever happened, despite your being able to come at them about it and be correct and pursue it and have that succeed, you still would have had to suffer that trauma. And so that's why I want you to think about prevention. And I'm gonna pursue training one, and that's gonna be I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more. Verbal abuse of a sexual nature, that is calling people sexual names when you're being mad at them. And I would say calling them sexual names when you're not mad at them. That's not appropriate behavior in a workplace. Touching, grabbing of a sexual nature, repeatedly standing too close or brushing up against someone. The way you prevent that one is that if the first time somebody bumps into you in a supposedly close environment, when you see them coming towards you again, stop them and say, "Let me get out the way so you can go by," and stand way back so they'll know that you're not going to play it with them because they're feeling you out. Okay? They're testing. I always saw the tests before they came, so they weren't able to play with me like that. Asking to socialite, asking to socialize during off-duty hours when the person has said no or it's indicated that they're not interested. Supervisors in particular should be careful. Supervisor, if you are a supervisor and you thinking about dating somebody, if you're not willing to tell the offices of personnel management or your human resources office that you're pursuing that conversation, it's wrong. If you're not willing to tell human resources that you have had that conversation or that question to that subordinate, it's wrong. Now, you have to decide if that orgasm or whatever thing you're tripping on is worth your career and your marriage and all the other things you have built. Okay? So, you got to get your priorities straight. Get your priorities straight. Even if this person has indicated they might be willing to be with you, still get your priorities straight. No orgasm in the world would be worth my career or something that I have built just to have, an orgasm. You can go down the street and get an orgasm. There are plenty of people willing to let you have sex with them if you pay them. But there are things you can do. That's all I'm saying. So, stop that. Just stop. Giving gifts or leaving objects that are sexually suggestive. You know, the stupid stuff that people do. Don't do it. You know what I mean. So, demeaning and offensive pictures, cartoons, and things. I once made a man take down a picture. I was on a temporary duty assignment, and oh shoot. Let me cut this off because I'm not going to answer. There. Okay, let me pause this for a minute. If I didn't really pause that, I'm sorry. Because I call myself hitting the pause button, but it might have not hit it. And I do apologize. Sorry about that. Okay, so sexually demeaning pictures. Oh, yes. I was talking about I had gone to a temporary duty assignment and I walked into the sergeant's office. That was a man who ran the place, and he had a very offensive picture on the wall. I made him take it down. I did not care. They didn't ask me to come back, mind you, but He apologized to me and took that down because hell was gonna, heads were gonna roll. They knew it, I knew it. If you didn't take that down, it was a very offensive picture. It was one of the most offensive things I've ever seen in my life. It was wasn't racial. It was just male female offensive, and it's, in fact, if it wasn't down, I would have put barbed wire and spikes all over everything, and he wouldn't have liked the picture. I would have modified it with, and then I would have made him hang it up for 30 days as part of arbitration, because I would have turned it into a torture device for men. I had some ideas. He wouldn't have liked them. He probably would have hurt, cringed. Okay, so a victim of sexual harassment can be a male or a woman, and it can be the same sex as the harasser. Like I said, if you don't want Department of Personnel or your Human Resources office to know about it, then it's probably wrong. The next thing I'm going to talk about is some new rules. Well, actually, about people. Now, my agency had their training and they would give us their policy and they'll discuss it after their training. And what we concluded, since we're in the DC area, which is unlike any other place in the country, there is sexual liaisons between management and supervisor within the federal government, and co-workers and all up and down the chain of command. And people turn their heads because they just say, you big boys and girls, you should take care of yourself. Only time they get involved is when one of them files a complaint. Otherwise, they really honestly don't jump on it. They really don't. Only time they do is when somebody, one or the other, fusses about it. There was this young man that left the agency I was at with this rules and went to down south and was fired within a year because they have different rules in the other parts of the country. And I've been in both. I've been in federal agency in the DC metro area, and I've been in federal agencies in different parts of the country. Whole different set of rules in the DC metro area. And subordinate and manager do all kinds of things. So this stuff that happens around here, it's not the same. And so that's what I was going to tell you about. It's, you can get fired, and it won't be good. So this right here is for you to go ahead and look at it when you want to, if you're going to be training, but it'll be something that you need to know for the policies of sexual harassment. Okay, so let me pause here and flip to the next one. Okay, I'm back. Now I'm going to go to the training little thing that I just had a second ago that don't like me no more. I think I was heading on slide 14. Now this is the training that I got out of Department of Education, but they all have the same similar stuff, and you will get your policies when you first enter a job in the federal workforce. And this is most likely what their human resources office gave them when they for the new employees that come in, so that they will be part of their orientations to the company. And I'm going to go, this is stuff important to know too, but I'm going to go over, I think it's on slide 14, EEO. I mean, sexual harassment. Let's talk. Now, this is them discussing quid pro quo type of sexual harassment and hostile environment. This is only thing I'm showing you. This is how an agency will put together their training packet. That's all. And this was right on the internet. In fact, if I did have an agency and I wanted to do some training, I would probably look at this. But most likely they have this along with other training in the training package. So they talk about your hostile work environment, and they talk about quid pro quo. That means you get something if you give them sexual favors. I think when I first got in the military, they tried that with me, but I don't think like other women. So when they did try that, talking about because I was a pretty girl, and they said something along the lines, "Well, you should be nice to the guys around here," because it was all men and me. And I found that amusing because I said something along the lines was, "All y'all are doing is paying me this little old this little airman salary, and this airman salary has these specific things, and so you expect me to stay up all night fooling with them and get up here at 6 in the morning? I ain't working no two jobs with no airman salary. I'm working I'm working this little ugly job and still come to work too. I cussed them out, told them like, you still won't, and I'm still gonna come to work. I don't think so. um that's my logic. So I don't think I don't play like innocent so and so. No, you gotta be. I even slammed. I worked in another part where um, there was like a counter and a window that you can lean into the window and see the whole facility, right? And when I have to go get something, I have to turn my back and go over to the refrigerators and pull out whatever it is that they're getting or purchasing. But I had the habit of closing their door. And one of my supervisors asked me about it, and I said, "No, I'm not gonna let them see me walk around. Women who get paid for men to look at them make $5,000, make $500 a night. I'm only making airman salary. No, they ain't getting no free looks. They not getting free looks at me. I was built like 36, 24, 37, something like that. No, you're not getting no free look. I'll be darned if you do. Y'all making airman salary. You're not paying me to show you, give you a treat. I don't think so. So I don't think like I don't think like other women. And there was and plus I was kind of mean. You know how they say women who would hit a man should be hit back. I agree. But if the woman is a pretty good fighter, you won't get a chance to hit back. So especially if you hit me first, yeah, you're gonna take the punches I'm gonna deliver, and yes, you will fall down. Because I have knocked down men. I've knocked down one, two, three, more than one man. Okay, because I could fight. I was good puncher. My aunt taught me how to fight, and she learned from her brother. So we didn't do the little windmill thingy that they do that's equivalent to a third grader fighting. We threw straight punches and hit you here and there, and you would fall. And I would hit you. I really would. And you can try to hit me back, but it's on. It would be ugly, and I would not be the only one bleeding. And they learned that. They knew. They knew. They knew. They didn't mess with me. But like I said, no amount of sex with me would be worth what's going to happen to you. So I didn't think like that. But what I did do is pay attention to what was going on. Among the things I learned was that the prettiest girls aren't necessarily the ones harassed. The prettiest girls are not necessarily the ones harassed. And I analyzed why that was and what was going on and why. And it mostly be because, and what I narrowed it down to, among other things, was that these idiots or these men who are making these passes are going for the women that they think will say yes. Excuse me. Yeah, they're going for the women that they think will say yes. An example is this. I and my co-instructors were instructors, right? And then our agency had a meeting with all the students with us in a room, and the meeting was about sexual harassment. I think they used a different term, sexual discrimination or something or another. And the only one that spoke up about being harassed was the one that who wasn't the prettiest. She was actually the least attractive female in the room. But what she had done was this a few days earlier was have a young black male cornered in the refrigerator, and she's rubbing his belly and his chest and his arm, trying to get him to go empty trashes for her rather than doing it herself. What she didn't know was that this individual would help anybody because that's just the way he was. But no man is going to stop you when they're getting groped by a female. So he's sitting there letting her do it and pretending to be resisting her wiles while she keeps on trying to convince him. And I just shook my head because it was just stupid. She wasn't my student, she was the other co-instructor student. But everybody that was working in the building could see that, and everybody that worked in the building knew how she did. So a few days earlier than this meeting, she apparently had been approached because she spoke up and described it, that one of the assistant civilian supervisors had asked her did she want to go with him to his car while he smoked a joint or something. He offered her drugs and go to his car. She said no. But two things here: see how fast things can turn around if you're that manager or that supervisor. See how fast things can turn around with just a 3 second, a 2 or 3 sentences. Your whole career and your life could be ruined. That's the first thing. And two, he probably saw her and thought that she was promiscuous enough to go to the car with him. Okay? Which leads me to my second point. In my agency, where I'm at in DC, we had a looser policy where even in our training they said you can ask once, but if you keep asking, then it's harassment. So it's not in writing, but that was what they wound up being a consensus. Yes, you can ask once, but don't keep asking. Now here's what I'm gonna add. I add that after you've been asked, and the female or the male or whoever's been asked needs to give a clear no. You need to speak clearly and make them understand that it's no. If you're wishy washy or sounding indecisive, that's not a no. Okay? If you sound indecisive or making excuses or wishy washies, like you're saying, I would, but X, Y, and Z is happening. I would, but I got to go to so and so. I would, but I this or that. You haven't said no. All you did was tell them there was an obstacle that was preventing you from going. I'm waiting on the machinery. Give it a second. Give it a second. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Okay. Now, so all you did was build obstacles. And in their mind, they say that if that obstacle is clear, then the answer is yes, because you didn't say no. That, for better or for worse, is how a lot of men think. Is that if that obstacle is not there, then that answer is yes. That's the only way they think. That's the only way they heard it. That's what you said. That is technically what you said. You didn't say no. You said I can't because of this obstacle or this reason. Now, I know that you're trying to soften the blow or not hurt their feelings, but it is better to just be straight with them if you're not interested and say no, no, thank you. Now, some of the idiots would tell you, ask you why, but you gotta keep it brief and keep it clear. Okay, don't confuse them. That's not fair to them. And I know that you are expecting them to get a clue after the second or third turn down. I would suggest they do too, but sometimes they don't. So it's hard. I had a female coworker who was dreading going downstairs passing the elevator because she knew that the guy who's been asking her out was down there and she didn't want to see him and she didn't want to have that conversation. But she had never said no. So he was continually asking her because she never said no. She said because other reasons. Now, men, if that's good, well, askers, if they haven't said yes by the second time you ask, chances are they don't really want to go out with you. And if you're not sure, then tell them the ball's in their court, and if they want to go out with you, they have to ask you. That is, if they'd have made two excuses. Okay, that's just a new rule. But somebody's got to ask somebody, or else our species was die out. Somebody's got to ask, but asking does not mean harassment. Harassment means repeated asking. So this training is a nice little place to start, and it's really good training, and it's right on the internet. Okay. Now, that's all I have about that for there. Let me see. And let me go over my notes. Okay, and now my final topic. It's about men who are harassed by women. Yes, there are men who are harassed by women. I'm going to put this table of contents back up there and just to have it up on the screen here. But from what I can hear on some of the other videos and in personal experience watching my male coworkers and having conversations with male coworkers and relatives, these women, and there are women out there who qualify for sexually harassing you. There are women who sexually harass. Just like I said, that female is putting her hands all over the guy. He had every right, according to the rules today, to foul on her. You say that he was implying permission, but she still touched him, and it was a and obviously he welcomed her advances, but it may well been where she didn't, or it could be implied. There's one where they were talking about. It was a recent video, and it was talking about some man. I want to. It wasn't. I don't remember who it was. I forgot. But it's somebody like Jesse Jackson supposed to be the made a pass at this lady, and she's all distressed about it. But everything that we could see was that she was looking like it was welcoming. So unless you made it clear that it's unwelcome, it don't count, because you can't just after the fact indicate that you weren't welcoming about it when everything about you said that you were. But there are some men who are having definitely unwelcome advances on them. I've heard gentlemen talk about women taking off their clothes in the office, other women putting their hands on them. I've seen women put their hands on them, and the man, was avoiding them. I saw um, various things. I was at a club when a man told this strange lady to slow her roll because he didn't want her putting her hands on him. And he did. He did. He made her stop putting his hands on her. So, men, as you go about your workplace and in your real life, and there are women who are putting their hands on you and that you don't want their advances, I would suggest you start reporting to your human resources office, getting things put on record there, because there's some women who need to be um, um, on the hot seat as much as some men, and I have seen them. You have seen them. So men need to step up and start fouling too. I know it don't seem manly, but you don't seem manly as you're losing your career over women too. And women tend to think that it's a one-sided situation, but it is not. Now the majority is men to women, but that is not the full thing. There are women who harass young men of today. This video is here to help you think or encourage you to think so that you won't lose your career in the future 10, 15, 20 years from now, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Okay? So just nip stuff in the bud. Make sure that it is clear that you have consensual whatever contact you got, whatever conversations you have. Okay? Make sure that you stop asking after they have said no. Make sure you get a clue, or else leave the ball in their court. When they turn you down. Okay? So this is all stuff to think about. I'm glad that you listened to me. Thank you. But yeah, this is stuff to pay attention to. All right then. Bye bye.